Hi friends, Pastor Terry here. We are Dalhousie Church and this is the 10-Minute Coach. I want to take you into the second and third commandments of the 10, the top 10 in this series that we've just begun on Easter Sunday. But to get there, this time I want to take you back to the backstory and remind you how we got to the book of Deuteronomy. There's a whole backstory to the nation of Israel and the things that took place. And some of you have been with me in past series when we talked about, we used some graphic images to kind of help us remember part of this story. And so if we go from Egypt, where the children of Israel were enslaved for 400 years, God raised up a deliverer whose name was Moses. Moses said, "Let my people go." Pharaoh said no. 10 plagues. Finally, Pharaoh said, "Go." They crossed the Red Sea and turned right to go to Mount Sinai, where God gave them the law. They then went on to Kadesh Barnea, where they sent 12 spies into the land. 10 said no, 2 said go. Their initials were JC, Joshua and Caleb. And because of the people said no, God sent them into the wilderness to wander for 40 years. Then we came to the plains of Moab, at the north end of the Dead Sea, where Moses preached 3 long sermons, and then Moses died. That was the end of the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy are these sermons that were preached to the children of those who came out of Egypt. The 40 years of wandering, and technically it was 38. If you read through the first 4 chapters of Deuteronomy, you'll discover this. 40 is a rounded number. They wandered in the wilderness. It was basically a death march. While the rebellious generation who had God had done so much for them, and then they refused to believe him, and so they wandered. The consequence of their sin was wandering. The consequence of their disbelief in God. Now, this has a connection to the message this past Sunday when we were looking at Deuteronomy chapter 5, where we were verses 9 through 11. And the second and third commandments that I mentioned in the sermon, that the numbering systems vary. The Roman Catholics, the Lutherans use they put 1 and 2 together, and then they separate what we would call 10. More recent scholars have divided how we think about that 1, have no other gods. 2, don't make any idols. 3, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Those would be how we would separate it out. Now, before I finish with the backstory to all of this, Deuteronomy chapter 1 says, "These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the wilderness east of the Jordan, that is in the Arabah, opposite Suph, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizhabah." So that's where we get this idea that, okay, this is north of the Sea of Galilee, or those may be locations that lead there to the plains of Moab before the people went across the Jordan River into the promised land. But here's the part I want to get to, verse 2, Deuteronomy chapter 1. "It takes 11 days to go from Mount Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir road. In the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month." So here's one of the points that's just grievous. It was an 11-day journey that took them 40 years. An 11-day journey that took them 40 years. Now, this is going to figure significantly, kind of in the third piece that I want to talk about here. I've given you some questions in our sermon notes that invite you to come back in and talk about the idols that want to command our lives. I've invited you to ask questions and discuss together those gods which we might be most susceptible to putting our faith and our trust in, and they become illegitimate. They become idols. They are not worthy of the weight of our lives to be leaned on them. They cannot sustain it. the politicians, the commerce, the people, the relationships. Maybe you can come up with some other would-be idols that call for our attention. And then I invited you to reflect on these, the way that we misuse God's name. We use it in vain by bringing it upon ourselves, kind of saying, hey, I'm doing this in God's name, and terrible things have been done throughout history in this manner. But there's this other one where I represent God. I represent who He is. And I want to carry that wisely. I want to carry it well. I want to represent Him in a worthwhile way. And I've invited you to think about that, talk a bit about that together. I've given you a question from last week, Deuteronomy chapter 5, this long sermon. Why does it make sense for the 10 to be near the beginning of this these long sermons? And then I've invited you to go to a place that I didn't have time to go to in the sermon itself, and that is around the language that is used related to these commands. In particular, there are consequences for disobedience, and there are consequences for obedience. There are blessings for those who will love God. And this is the first time we encounter this in the Ten Commandments. Verse 7, chapter 5, you shall have no other gods before me. Verse 6, we're going to come back to that next Sunday. Verse 6, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. This is really significant. The reason we're to listen to Him is because of what He's done for us. If we were the first people of God, the Hebrew people, He brought us out of Egypt. He took us out of slavery, and this is the one who is now saying, and here is now how you are going to live successfully in this land that I have brought you to. More on that next Sunday. Verse 7, you shall have no other gods before me. That would be commandment number 1. Commandment number 2, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath. Page flip. Or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins or the iniquity of the parents, to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. So don't miss the blessing that is there. Love God, and there's this extraordinary effect that is going to trickle down through the generations that follow. He shows His love to them. He's not guaranteeing that they're going to respond. He's not guaranteeing that they will embrace His love, but He will show it to them through the generations that precede, through His gracious calling of humanity to Himself. But there are consequences to those who hate God. Now, that's a strong word. He says, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Now, I've invited you to go to Deuteronomy chapter 24, which says the children should not be executed for the sins of their parents. And we say, well, so how do these concepts come together? And I'm going to let you wrestle with that a little bit, but let me offer you, a couple of tips, a couple of suggestions. Pay attention to the language. What is it that is being condemned in Deuteronomy 24:16? Not going to execute a child for the sin of the parent, or a parent for the sin of the child. What is it that's being said here? There's a consequence. There's a result. He's a jealous God, and a 3rd and 4th generation. There are many who would look at the 3rd and 4th generation and say that's basically the influence. You and I can look back at parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents and probably tell something of their stories and how those stories have somehow impacted us. Maybe your parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents immigrated to Canada, and that significantly impacted you. What about your great-great-grandparents? Probably you have no idea. There's a limit to the influence of the generations, and usually it's the 3rd or the 4th generation. I'll let you think about that. I've got more to say about this. So I'm going to create another video, first time I've tried this, that I'm calling Overtime. Won't always create it, but in this case, I think it's warranted. So if you'd like to discuss this more, go to Overtime, and I'll talk to you there. Bless you. Thank you. I'm Pastor Terry Lee. We are Dalhousie Church, and this has been the 10-Minute Coach. Bye for now.